Hey, good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing tonight? Welcome, welcome. We're just going to stand by here for a minute while everyone comes in. We only just had a handful of suspects here apply for tonight's webinar, so I'm going to wait here just a minute, and there's a few more folks coming in. It's great to be with you all tonight. Thanks for joining. We're going to wait just a minute while everyone else kind of gets settled and enters the meeting. Glad to have you guys. Absolutely. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, looks like everyone's muted. Everyone's got their screens off. Okay, good. All right, gang. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. My name is Mike Davila, one of the two partners of College Inroads. Tonight, we're going to be talking a lot about researching schools lists, which is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because I don't think I did this well when I was sitting in our students' shoes, a millennia ago. So we're going to talk through some of the resources. We're going to take a look at the College Inroads portal. We're going to be looking at various other external sources that we can be looking at to conduct really great research on the schools list. Okay, so that being said, just a little bit of, I guess, kickoff material. We are recording tonight's session, so if you have to skedaddle or something, you can always come back to it. That's in your students' portal under the monthly webinar link in the files. So you can always go back to it. Secondly, Anne-Marie and I, we started this many, many moons ago doing a monthly webinar. And the idea was, hey, let's present for 20, 30 minutes, give you guys a little taste of whatever the menu is for the evening, open it up to questions in that particular arena. And if there are no questions, or once those questions get answered, we can open up the meeting for any questions related to college planning or anything of that nature. So that's tonight's forum. That's our format. Super informal. If you would like to ask a question, we don't have that many folks on tonight, so you can just unmute yourself and ask the question as I go through. You can text into the portal, but it's just me. When Anne-Marie and I are together, then one of us can kind of play clean up and get into those text questions. So tonight, if it's okay with you, if you have questions, just unmute and ask the question. That's great. Okay, so with that being said, let me go ahead and set up here with the PowerPoint presentation, and we'll get kind of rocking and rolling here just a sec. Okay, let me get the screen sharing going, and we will begin. Okay, great. So I'm going to share a little bit of basic slides on researching schools. So let me get over to this. Okay, good. So hopefully you can see my screen, and let me get over to the PowerPoint. Okay, great. So what are we going to cover tonight? Number one, the most important thing is doing the actual research, not punting, not saying, I'll get to it later. I already know the schools well enough. No, we really want to dive into the research on the schools list. It really just makes the ride a lot smoother for the student. So number one, we're going to talk about the importance of doing the research. Number two, we're going to look at the tools and give some encouragement to dive deeper than other people might want to dive into the research. Ultimately, I want every student to be able to answer the supplemental question that says, hey, why are you applying to my college? And do that really well and very thoroughly. Unfortunately, those types of supplementals, you don't typically get a lot of room to write. Usually it's a couple hundred words, maybe 450 at the most. So definitely less than a page, typically for those supplementals that are asking, hey, why are you applying to my college? But the most important reason is to know that you are a good match and that you have looked at all the special programs and offerings and the elective courses and all that, all those kinds of good things. I laugh because I had done a lot of preparation for my undergraduate, and I had visited the college. I'd done a lot of research, and yet once I got there, I was, surprised, just like anyone else going to the first year of school, There's definitely things that take you by surprise. My first roommate at the Naval Academy lasted 9 hours. I think that person got caught off guard even more than I did. So we really don't want that sort of thing to happen, going to Baylor or to TCU or to, Hiram College or wherever. We want to make sure it's a great match so that we're very comfortable and happy in our ride. So for the class of 26, just to kind of kick off, these are some things that are typically going on right now for us. Now, if you just joined our firm, no sweat. These things are probably not happening, and that's just fine. There's plenty of time for this. But if you've been with us for a little bit, the college research probably is underway. If you started with us a year or so ago, you've probably been through all the lead up getting into the college search, and then you're into the research process. The college list, if you were in the class of 26, hey, we're almost in May, which is kind of crazy. The college list, we've asked all of our students to please do the research on their schools so that once they get to the end of this semester, they are able to put down, oh yeah, these are the 8 to 10 schools that we're applying to. Now, can those change? Absolutely, but they really should be pretty darn firm by the end of this semester. And again, no sweat if you just joined us, plenty of time for that. Teacher rec letters, I mean, we don't need those yet. We're not asking any teachers to write recommendations at this point. However, it is good to be strategizing as to who are going to be the recommenders, and get those people kind of queued up, get their contact information and things like that, so that it's easy to get their recommendation ready to rock and roll over the summer. So let me get back over here. So yeah, college visits, that's another really big deal. I don't think we actually do enough talking about doing college visits, because really it's important to get, boots on campus. That's what we always have said, because yeah, you might end up in a position of coming in, going to your dream shot school, then realizing, oh wait, this isn't such a great fit for me because the students don't look like me at all, or I don't really love the vibe of the campus or whatever. So getting to the campus and actually looking around to see, what does it feel like to be on campus? What do the labs look like? Hey, what are the important elements of campus? Are those elements, up to my standards? Those sorts of things. Again, if you've been with us a bit, you're probably already starting on what we call the initial supplements. These are basic, kind of usual suspects, types of essays that colleges like to ask, like, hey, why are you applying to us? Hey, why are you choosing your potential major? Talk to me about a community that you've been a part of, et cetera. So we're doing that type of basic work right now with most students that have been with us for a while, so that as we get into the summer, we're then going to really spend a lot of time on the core essay for the Common App, which is, again, going to get shotgunned to everybody. And then in August, once the Common App actually opens, then we will see, hey, did TCU change their essay prompts? Are they asking the same things that they asked last year? And then we'll be in really good shape to be able to attack those questions. And then lastly, SAT and ACT preparation. A lot of students have just done the March SAT. Many people are, fewer, I should say, are doing ACT this month. And then perhaps we're going to be doing an SAT or ACT in May or June. So all those things are coming up, plus all the end of semester stuff, all the AP exams that are about to hit, et cetera. So I know it's a super busy time. One of the things that we have done administratively in our practice is kind of block out the first couple of weeks of May as a quiet period. You can certainly meet with us if you need to have meetings, but we want to respect the fact that a lot of students are finishing up the semester, doing those AP exams, things like that. Okay, so into the meat of the meeting for tonight. Why even bother researching the schools? There's pros and cons of any decision that we make. So if we're looking at this as a decision that we are making as a 17-year-old, okay, the cons of doing research, it absolutely takes time. It is something that you have to put some effort into. And yes, I do realize many people are really strapped for time. The college websites tend to be difficult to navigate in some cases. Yeah, they're massive. And no one is saying, hey, all colleges should be uniform in how you present information to your prospective applicants. Not at all. You will see great websites, poor websites, and everything in between. And there are just a lot of nooks and crannies on college websites to look at and to investigate. So it is a bit of a rabbit hole. If you've never been down one of those rabbit holes, it is now time to fall down the rabbit hole. I'm super busy. I know that I'm going to apply to XYZ school, and I know it's already a really good fit for me. I know it's super tempting to do that. My fear is that if we say those sorts of things and then take action on that side, then we're going to get to some of these essay prompts and we're not going to be able to answer them as fully as we might have been able to do before if we'd done some research. So obviously there are pros of research, and these are the ones that we're espousing. One, you will find unique qualities of colleges if you search for them, for sure. I know that for me, back in the day, we had a book. It was a view book. You know, they would send out these huge things in the mail. We would get them and we would look at them for a few minutes. For me, I actually poured through mine, and I really, really enjoyed seeing what was presented at the college. And for me, that was important to know that kind of information. Two, you can understand the programming a lot better and start to make some comparisons. And I want to hit that point because definitely the biochemistry program at one college at University of Houston is going to be very different from A&M, let's say. So it's really great to be able to see some of those things come into focus as you do your research. Also, it helps solidify, in my estimation, if I'm a student, if I'm diving into a lot of different schools, I'm starting to solidify the things that actually do mean a lot to me. I'm actually, hey, if intramural sports are really where it's at for me, okay, great. I'm going to be looking at those programs to see what's different one school to the other. And then it may also cause you to question or confirm the college fit. Yeah, it's interesting for me because I get to kind of introduce students to this concept in a one-on-one session. And there have definitely been times where a student and I will be working and they'll look at a school that they previously had like an image of in their mind. And then they look at it a little closer and go, you know what? I don't know about this one. I might have to put this on the back burner for a minute, or there might be another one that's kind of an ad from myself or another one of the consultants, and they look at it and they, hey, this is something I hadn't thought of, So these things definitely happen during the research phase, and we want that to happen. So the colleges on their side, I want to kind of go back to the idea that colleges are looking for all of these things. It's a marriage. So we can want all of these things that we're researching, but we also have to present these things to the college, and this is in order. This is something that the Independent Education Consultants of America kind of does research on each year. They survey several hundred colleges, and then they put in order these factors. And the top 5 are the ones that I really pay most attention to. Number 1 and number 2 have everything to do with school performance, the rigor in the curriculum, the grade point average in core courses. Those are all coming off the transcript. Number 3, SAT or ACT scores consistent with GPA. Yep, that's important to colleges, whether they're test optional or not. Most colleges really value seeing school students with higher scores. So we always kind of beat the drum and saying, yeah, even if we're not a great test taker, we want to prep for these tests and try to put our best foot forward. And then number 4 and 5, these are resume and essay types of things. So number 4 is, hey, what have we done with our time? What do we do outside? Do we serve our community? Do we really enjoy sports? What are the things that make us unique in terms of how we spend our time? And then 5, my favorite, which are the essays. How do we present ourselves? What do we think about? How do we think? What are our personal characteristics that the colleges really want to see? And then the rest of the list kind of rounds everything out. But a lot of those things like personal recommendation letters come back to your personality traits, which also should be, part of number 5, the essays. Same thing with number 11. So you'll see a lot of those things have tendrils that, kind of latch onto other items on the list. So how do I research my college? So I would suggest doing what I call a top-down approach, okay? And I'm going to pull something out of really when I taught naval strategy and tactics at the Naval Academy. We taught midshipmen how to look at things strategically and tactically. Okay, so we're going to apply the same principles tonight. So from a big picture perspective, from a strategic view, As a student, I want you to talk, number one, with your parents about the finance plan. Okay. There's no reason to put, I won't even name a name, but there are colleges out there, guys, that are like $94,000, $98,000 a year. No one has bridged the 100,000 mark and officially, but there's some really expensive schools, and I know that there are some parents that are saying, nope, we're not going to pull the trigger on that school, even if you get in. So students, it behooves you, number one, to talk to your parents about the finance plan, so you kind of know what what your boundaries are, what your parameters are. Number two, review the data in your Inroads portal. Okay, I'm going to pause that one. We're going to put that on the back burner because I'm going to show you that in a minute. The FISC guide. This used to be, it still is. It's a giant book. It's a huge tome, but it's digested into the College Inroads portal so that you can look at hundreds and hundreds of schools, big picture 50,000 foot view profiles. So those are great. An external website I really appreciate, which is also linked out of your portal, is Niche. That one I find it really helpful for its scatter plot. The question, will I get into this college with my GPA and SAT scores? Forget all the good, pithy personality traits, but do my core numbers match up with the college? So that's something Niche can do, amongst other things. Review the list of colleges provided by your consultant. Absolutely. And sadly, sometimes that doesn't happen really well, but I would suggest really taking a look at all the ones that are on the college list. Part of the reason when I train consultants, I tell them, look, we don't want to give students 45 colleges. I've been with firms that do that, and it's overwhelming. Nor do we want to say, hey, here's your 5 schools, because then it's almost like, here's the heavy-handed, you're going to go to one of these 5 schools. I'm telling you, no, that's not the idea. So yeah, usually about 20 colleges is what we like to present. And definitely, if you're not seeing what you want to see out of the college list, be in touch with your educational consultant or your client relationship specialist. Also take a look at the mission of the college. What are they marketing? What are they trying to achieve themselves? This is an area that a lot of students don't pay any attention to. Just one of those things. As a 17-year-old, I had no interest in what strategically was happening at the colleges that I was looking at or evaluating, which, by the way, I only did 2, which is that's not enough. We need 8 to 10 schools. But that's really easy to find on college's website. And then finally, artificial intelligence. I actually do like using AI in this realm. I do not like it for essay generation or anything like that, but for research, fantastic. It's a matter of asking the questions and asking intelligent questions, and then going back and taking a look and seeing, hey, does that jibe with what I've been asking? Things like, hey, what would you say the top 5 differences are between the honors college at the University of Texas and the one at Texas A&M, for example? I just had a student gain acceptance to U of H's honors program. So fantastic. That popped in my mind. That's a great use of AI. I did a quick search on that, and man, it came up with a nice little chart for me showing the differences between the honors program and then the honors college at U of H. So big differences there. And I think AI does a good job of kind of putting it into bite-sized chunks that we can understand. So that's the strategic view of researching. But into the tactical view, now we're getting into the weeds, okay? And now we want to look at some real specifics. Number one, visiting the website of the program or the major that we're interested in, that's key, gang. A lot of times there are lots of hints that they drop onto their website of the biomedical, engineering webpage for XYZ school. You could see the things that they're really looking for, keywords, et cetera, et cetera. So when I go in there with students, I like to have them look at those things. So special programs, I like to look at the curriculum. Gang, that is the most boring if you ever have insomnia, look at the course catalog of any college. But it is so vital to see, what are the electives? How many courses am I going to have to do in my core? how many are going to be part of a university-wide core curriculum? Again, it varies widely across different types of schools. So I think it's really important to do that basic research. Oftentimes I'll ask students, hey, do you know what a credit hour is? And they're like, nope, no idea. That's not something that we deal with in high school, of course. But you kind of need to understand what these basic building blocks are as you look at the curriculum. Okay, courses of interest, professors, their research interests, things like that. Gang, there's no problem with name dropping in an essay. Hey, I'm applying to Smith College. This particular professor is looking at, areas of concern that are very synonymous with mine. I would love to, be in the lab or, do research with this particular professor. That tells a college a lot. It seems really passé almost, but I can tell you there's probably I can count on one hand times when students came to me saying, hey, I've kind of got this in an essay idea. Do you think this is good? No, most students will not do that sort of depth of research to get into that area. Okay. Also look at the admissions webpage. It seems really basic. A lot of times you think, oh, I'm going to admissions. They're going to give me a link to the application and that's about it. Nope. There's all sorts of other really vital information, like who is my admissions rep, the person that's going to possibly advocate for me if I'm on the cusp of gaining acceptance. Yep, gang, I need to be communicating with that person if I have questions, specific questions that are kind of drummed up during this research phase. Definitely the types of applications, the deadlines, things like student life often are now found on the admissions webpage, things like all of the clubs and activities. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, there's lots of reason for me as a high school student to want to go look and see what is my life going to look like? What kind of exploration do I want to do in this four-year college experience? And the colleges really want to hear about that kind of stuff as you do your review. Yep, the student life. Am I going to be in Greek life? What's the housing situation look like? Is the dining, the social scene, all of those kinds of things, are they on par with what I need out of a college experience? Career development, places like, most business schools are going to have their own career development, people, their own section that will help develop the resume, develop internships, all that kind of stuff. So definitely check that out. Conduct a virtual tour, take a look at their marketing stuff, student life videos, talk with the admissions reps, do a financial aid webpage review. There is a net price calculator on every college's financial aid webpage. So we can do a dry run and see, okay, that college on the front end looks like it's $68K a year. What's it look like, if we put our data into it? Back in 2011, when they began this, it was a crapshoot whether they're even going to be close to being accurate. Now, years and years later, yep, pretty accurate. And then finally, doing in-person visits. I think that's really great to be able to step off the beaten path, go to the student union, sit down with a non-tour guide and ask, hey, how's your experience really been? What are the professors like? What's your workload like? What was the biggest surprise that you had when you got here as a freshman? Stuff like that you can't get, just by going online necessarily. So a lot of in the weeds kind of research to help inform us as to whether or not this college is going to be a great fit or not. And then we also have a little bit of fun. At the end of the college research meeting, the educational consultant will assign your student to do a treasure hunt, basically, where they get to pick 3 different schools, go in and do a bit of basic research on those schools. If they turn in that work into their files, they get a reward. It's a lot of fun, and it gets the, kind of primes the pump, so to speak, gets the momentum moving in terms of doing the research. But students don't just stop there. We have you do 3 schools, but if you're going to have 8 or 9 schools on your list, you should do the research on all of them. Okay, so what are my chances of admission? This is a question that we get a lot. What do you think about my probability of getting into XYZ school? Okay, great. Here is how you can address that, doing some basic research. Okay, number 1, take a look at your SAT, ACT data. Are you in the upper quarter of the applicants getting into that school? And you can see this data. We'll look at it here in a minute on the portal. Same thing with GPA data. Are you in the upper half of the grade point averages, either weighted or unweighted? Now, GPA is a little bit of an odd bird because most colleges that are selective are going to disaggregate your transcript. They're going to throw out all the underwater basket weaving, choir, track, whatever it is, focus in on the core curriculum, kind of renorm everything to a 4.0. I know it sounds unfair, but then they're going to say, okay, well, you took XYZ number of APs and upper division types of classes. We're going to give you credit for that, but we're going to do our own little, rating scale, so to speak, on all of that. So GPA, we turn it in, you report it through your transcript or through the, what's called the self-reported academic record, but it is kind of something that gets manipulated on the college's side. Definitely look at the acceptance rate of the college, although I'm going to tell you not all acceptance rates are equal, and we'll look at that in a little bit more detail here in a minute. The yield, that's the percentage of students that actually show up once given the chance to attend. Some colleges have a very low enrollment yield. Most private schools, as a matter of fact, like University of Denver, they don't have 80% of their acceptance, pool showing up on campus. That's probably more like 25 to 30% would actually show up once they've given offers of admissions. Whereas a school like Harvard, they're going to have like an 85, 90% enrollment yield because it's Harvard. But still 10% of the students will go someplace else. Review your position on the scatter plot within niche. We can show you that in a minute as well. And then you can take a look at the differences between acceptance ratios for doing early action, early decision, regular admissions, all that sort of stuff. Plus, if we're applying to schools like University of Georgia or Berkeley or UNC Chapel Hill, we need to know that the in-state versus out-of-state admissions ratios are going to come to play because these are state schools, and many of them have mandates to admit and bring in a whole bunch of in-staters over out-of-state people. So there's some tools here that we can look at in order to pin down that type of data. Finally, doing college visits, definitely prep by doing this initial research we've talked about on previous pages. You're going to want to go to the information session. That's like a big, usually lasts 30, 45 minutes, something like that, but it's a really great thing to sit through. Every campus is going to have that. They're usually going to follow that with a physical tour of campus, but if you get in, sometimes you can request, hey, I'm looking at business. Can we do a business specific tour? And they'll put you with people that will take you specifically to the business program to examine that. Get your questions answered. Again, the information session is great for that, or on the tour. If possible, if your admissions rep is there and they're not traveling, because a lot of the year they're actually out and about trying to stir up interest in the college, you can sometimes do admissions reps interviews. And if you get in line to do that, if you get accepted for something like that, let us know because we can help you prep for that interview. Sometimes you can speak with a professor in the discipline that you're looking to attend. If it's a smaller private liberal arts college, yeah, you're probably going to get a chance to do that if you ask for it. Okay. But if it's, Texas A&M, it's probably going to be pretty rare that you're going to get that chance. Attend a class. If you're an athlete, definitely talk to the coach, evaluate the outside community, and then take notes. You can do that in your system as well, just to make sure that you've covered your bases, and you will remember all of the detail 6 months later when you actually are going to make your decisions. So some bonus points here. Some schools are tracking demonstration of student interest. Not all. I know many of you have heard of this. This has been around for a long time. But yeah, some schools like Tulane will absolutely pick up on the fact that your student visited their booth at the college fair, or attended an at-school college presentation at lunch hour, or talked to the admissions rep, or emailed them, or clicked on the emails that were sent out for marketing, etc. So the biggest demonstration of interest, though, of all, is applying early decision. That's the binding contract. That is you raising your hand saying, hey, if you accept me, I am absolutely coming, bar none, to your college. So that is a huge demonstration of interest. Also, I want to point out applying early in the cycle. That matters in some cases. And we'll just put the word out here. Texas A&M, they have rolling admissions, which is a type of admissions plan that allows you to dump in your application, and within a period of time, which is usually pretty short, you should get a response. Now, their process is different because they are selective in many of their majors, including engineering and business. So What's weird is that they have a hard and fast due date. They have a deadline. A lot of schools that have rolling admissions, their deadline is like August or April of the senior year. So it's kind of a non-issue. Nope, not them. They have a November 1st deadline. So what I'm getting at here is you want to apply very early to Texas A&M with rolling admissions, because typically their business and engineering programs fill up way before their deadline. You don't see that with other schools. A&M is a very weird bird when it comes to that. So do we need to apply August 1st? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, that's probably not a good idea for many reasons. We can have a sidebar about that. But sometime in the month of August, early September, absolutely good. That is very much recommended. So again, applying early in the cycle. I picked on A&M, but there's other schools that are like it. You want to kind of be done as quickly as you can so that you can enjoy senior year. All right, so putting some theory into practice, we're actually going to get over onto the college Inroads portal. So excuse me for just a minute. I'm going to have to arrange a few things here with the presentation. So let me stop presenting here for a minute. This is a great time, by the way, to ask any questions that you may have. Anything in the portal there, Emery?
Yep, there were 2 questions that came in, Mike. One was about, I think both of them were about visiting. Do college visits need to be official visits, or will unofficial weekend visits suffice?
Okay. Yeah, let me take that question. Essentially, the answer to that is, yeah, they kind of suffice, but you really do want to do an official tour. You know, I've done many, many informal tours of colleges, but I don't get enough out of them. I want to interact with the administration. I do want to be in touch with the person who's given the tour. I want to hear all their marketing points. Those are really valuable. So can you do an unofficial, college tour? Absolutely. It's fine to do that. But if you want points, if they do track demonstrated interest, you're going to want to sign in the admissions office and sit through that info session.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that as well. We definitely want to get on the college's radar so they know that we're interested.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of other questions. Do you want to do those now, or do you want to do the review?
Go ahead. I'm just going to go ahead and pop over into, I'm just trying to get us queued up to look at the portal. Perfect. So yeah, go ahead.
The next question is, how do we set up interviews with admissions reps? Is this done after the student puts in their application?
Great question. So no, typically those admissions interviews are going to be set up directly through the college, through either their admissions webpage, or if they don't have, like Rice, you can go literally on their admissions webpage and sign up for an interview. Most times what you need to do, let's say it's Trinity. Okay. What you really want to do is reach out to your admissions rep directly. And usually you'll see their profiles on the admissions webpage. And you can reach out to that person and say, hey, I go to Westlake High School. I don't know if you're going to be traveling to my school where we could do an interview or a sit down, but I would love to have a chance to meet with you and talk with you more about Trinity. Bing, 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 bing. They're going to set up either a coffee, or they're going to set up some time when they're at the school to sit down and chit chat. So, and yeah, while we're on that topic, the interviews, those are like chit chats. They're really very informal, very relaxed. I remember doing my interview many years ago. A full 06 Navy captain showed up at my house. I think I was wearing a suit jacket, with trousers. I don't wear that kind of stuff around my house. But yeah, it was very much more formal back in the day. Now, no, not so much. Okay, it's pretty relaxed, but we can help you prep for all that kind of good stuff.
And then the last question that came in is, why would you not apply to A&M August 1st?
Yeah, okay. So the real reason is, one, what happens if A&M changes their supplemental essay question? We're not going to know it until that day. I've never known anyone to brainstorm, produce anything that's worthwhile on day one of anyone. So sorry, guys. Even if you're the best writer, you're going to need a little bit of time to do some essay review, revision, all that kind of stuff. So that's the number one. Plus, the other real logistics, after talking to A&M's administrators as to what they do, they are not sitting in committee on day one. Okay, what they do is they have a silent, anonymous committee that no one really knows who's on this thing, that cherry picks and hand picks people through that period. They're not going to be picking people on day one. So that is not important to be stressing ourselves out to meet that 1 August. Resist at all cost the pressure that you guys are getting from other parents or other students to apply to A&M on August 1st. It's just not a good idea. Okay, so hopefully that's a good answer.
And one more came in. Let's see. This question is, how do we know if it's better for our child to take SAT or ACT?
Okay, great question. So in Appleruth Test Prep, which is the test prep process that you guys have by nature of working with us, there is a mock SAT and a mock ACT. It used to be the day we could do a outside like diagnostic test, but because of all the changes to the computer generated SAT and now the computer based ACT, it's best to do a mock of both and then compare the output and compare those scores. So you could do it right there within Appleruth, and whatever we're most comfortable with, that's the one to pursue. Anecdotally, gang, I will tell you probably 85% of our students are doing SAT. I don't know what the deal is there. Maybe it's because they've had market share over the last couple of years. Up till now, it's been about an hour shorter type of test than the ACT. I don't know, who knows? There's tons of other reasons, but yeah, SAT has been much more popular these days.
I would agree with that 100% as well. Yeah.
Okay, great. So here we are. We're with Max, and he's a current student. So let's go to the college list section here. So I'm just picking on his list for a minute. You can kind of see the colleges that he is choosing, the colleges that have been placed on his list. Really what we want to be able to do is dive into a school. So I'm just going to pick Rice, okay, for an example. I'm going to move everyone off to the side. Okay, so here, what you're going to be able to see is a whole bunch of really helpful data at a top level. This is the strategic view I was talking about earlier, okay? An 8% acceptance rate. I don't care, gang, if we have a 4.0 and a 1580 SAT score, that's still going to be a stretch or a reach for most of us just because of its selectivity. It has nothing to do with you as a student. It just has to do with how many people are actually trying to get in at the same time. Down here, then we can start to see things like, you know, a bit of basic student demography, which is really, really nice. You can start to see, you know, the differences between early decision and regular decision. You know, there's 2,900 students that applied early decision, 16% got accepted. So that's a pretty significant percentage bump over regular decision at 7%. But it's still 16%, gang. Anything below 20%, for most of my students, are going to be rating that as a stretch for most of us. For whatever reason, our GPA data is not available for Rice, but then you can see the SAT, ACT middle, 50 percentile scores. Again, admissions considerations, things like, hey, is an interview important or is it not considered? That sort of thing. So here, you know, under the considered section, an interview is definitely looked at. Whereas if you're an alum, they don't really consider it, surprisingly enough. Or this is going to be common for every school, at least on the surface, racial, ethnic status. State residence is considered, you know, and, you know, for most of us who are in this, you know, arena, when you look at schools like Emory, look at Rice, look at schools like that, most of their students don't come from the state that they are. In their private institutions, they're trying to prove their, you know, strength and have a real diversity of geographic, or I should just say geographic diversity. So they really work hard to bring in students from way out of state. So that's no big surprise there. So anyway, those are some important things to look at. Then for parents, here's that net price calculator I was talking about. So you can just push that button and go in there and see, okay, dump your data in, and it'll give you kind of an output of what they think the, you know, bottom line figure is going to be for that particular school. Then there's a whole bunch of other stuff here, which is, it's all good. Notes. This is where I was talking about. This would be great for you to use in taking notes after the visits. Here, the programs, I love this because sometimes the college website's not so clear as to all the different majors, and you got to really search hard for the different undergrad versus master's and doctoral degrees. Here, it just breaks it down and say, okay, if you're looking at business, Here are the 3 things that Rice offers as an undergraduate for business. Okay, great, good to know. And then finally, the FISC guide here at the strategic view really helps understand what this school is about, what they're trying to achieve, what their students are like. All of that is listed here. It's about a page, probably takes you a minute and a half to look at this. Plus you can see some of the overlap schools. These are schools that are kind of synonyms. And I don't know, sometimes I look at this and go, yeah, those are kind of similar. But anyway, finally, strongest programs and things like that. So this guide is great. I had mentioned the website niche. That's under the research tab. So when you click on that, if you click on niche, it's going to take you to Rice University's profile page, which is great. You can see their overall report card. They get a B plus for athletics, a B for safety. Everything else is rated pretty high. Down here, you can look at the rankings. Now, this isn't Kiplinger's or U.S. News and World Report, but I really like this because it gives you a chance to see, hey, what are they really known for? Would you have thought that Rice is great for kinesiology or physical therapy? No, most people are like, oh no, it's science or math or business, that sort of thing. So you can see what are they really known for. So really interesting to look at the niche at their rankings here. All right, we're going to pop back over to this page. I think for me, this plot is probably the most important on this entire website. So I could come in here and say, hey, I'm going to be an econ major. I am looking, let's say that you get a profile with niche, which is free, and you put in that, I've got basically a 29 ACT or like a 1350 SAT score. There are all these people who got accepted above me and to the right with higher, stronger academic records. If I flip the coin and look at the rejections, there's still a whole bunch of people above me and to the right. That should tell me that, wow, this is going to be pretty rough, for me to gain acceptance. So this is how I like to use this scatter plot. Some schools have lots and lots of data in here. Some schools don't have a ton of data, but yeah, it's usually well worth taking a quick glimpse at that to get further refined information as to whether or not I can get in. Then down here, I always like the reviews. There's lots of different goods, bads, uglies here. I tell people every school's got its pros, every school's got its cons. Even the best of the best, there's going to be people saying, the food is terrible or something is off about the school. So yeah, listen to those dissenting views as well, is what I would say. Okay, great. So there are some other places too. Let me see if I can stop this share. I want to go to one other web page here, see if I can bring it up.
Mike, we have more questions too.
Okay.
When you're ready.
Yeah, go for it while I'm pulling this up here.
Okay. Is there a downside to applying test optional if your SAT is not great?
Okay. Yeah. Good question on test optional admissions. Yeah, no, there's to me, there's no downside. It's just a caution in that we really don't, we don't want to neglect, I would say, the importance of essay writing at that point. Mainly because if we don't have SAT or ACT scores, it means the other parts of the application are going to take on added importance. So the essays need to be super strong. The teacher recommendations need to be super strong. We need to really take a close look at the resume. What is it saying between the lines? And one word on the resume versus essays, especially for those of you who are parents looking at those going, this is not a resume I've ever seen. Yeah, that's correct. The academic resume that students are working on for Inroads is very different from a job resume. So it's going to have multiple pages. It is going to talk about personal characteristics. So even if we don't hit on character traits in the essays, that, a lot of students have lots of different types of great personality traits. Okay, so we try to bring all of that into the resume as well. Plus, I want everyone here to know that the resume, it's going to serve as a direct conduit into the Common App activity section. So that's where the achievements go. That is where, you can, hey, I was an all-state, choir person. Fantastic. That needs to be highlighted there. Those achievements stand on their own. They're understood by the admissions reps. We don't necessarily turn around and necessarily talk about all of that on the essays, believe it or not. We might talk about the process of going through the preparation and what it took to become somebody who's at that level. I'm a level 12 gymnast or whatever, level 10 gymnast. Yeah, those kinds of things are there, but we don't need to, hit them over the head with, yeah, I won this competition, this competition. They get that. They've already seen the resume. So I just want to hit that really quickly, because if we're test optional, the essays in those resumes mean a lot more.
Yep, that's a great answer. I would say too that there are some universities that will attach scholarships to SAT scores, and so sometimes a school might be test optional for admissions, but you might not get a scholarship if you don't submit a test score. So, all right, let's see. Do you recommend interviews with admissions reps during junior year or the fall of senior year? And they want to know the difference between stretch and reach.
Okay, so yes, good. Those are two questions. Let me hit both of those. Yes, I absolutely do recommend trying to get an interview as early as possible, but know that there are going to be some schools that are like, yeah, we're not going to interview until summer or when you're a senior. That's okay too. But if you get in there as a junior, fantastic. You get bonus points. Secondly, let's see, I had a senior moment there, just flew out of my
Stretch
mind.
versus reach.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Henry, I'm so glad you're here. All right. All right. So stretch versus reach. Okay. So for me, a stretch is just a little bit above a unknown. Okay. It is, it's an internal term of art. It's not something that's formally defined, but a reach to me is like, hey man, if you see that on your college list, it's marked in red. A reach is red. Okay. That means we have a very little chance of gaining acceptance. Again, I don't take it personally. It's just the law of large numbers and lots of people applying, et cetera, et cetera. So have we seen people get into some reach schools? Yeah, absolutely. I had a student last year, went through a cycle, got into Harvard and MIT. They were both reach schools on his list. Happens, but I would never feel comfortable saying, oh, yeah, I think that's a likely, or that's just a maybe. So to me, when you see the schools rated, now we were kind of looking at Max's portal a minute ago. He didn't have any color coding to his schools list. But for those of you who are juniors, between now and the end of May, most of us are going to get standardized test scores back. We've got a fully formed resume. We've seen your transcript, all that. Yep, we will go in and rate your schools, one of four colors: likely, which is green, a maybe, which is blue, a stretch, which is orange, and then a reach, which is red. Okay, so parents, when you look at the schools list, you shouldn't see a majority of orange and red. If you do, it's time to push the button and say, we need an Inroads meeting, because we need to have options. The worst thing in my mind, the stuff that keeps me up at the wee hours of the morning sometimes in admission cycles, really talented students, very tip top of the class, very overweight college list where there's very little predictability of getting in or not, even with all the great attributes. All their schools are orange and red, with the exception being A&M or UT. Maybe they're top 6 or 5%ers now. That is a recipe for disaster. We need to have more options than just that. As a matter of fact, it was brought to our attention by some parents this past cycle. Hey, don't try to use A&M and UT as safety schools, even if we were top 5% or top 10% for A&M. I think that's wise advice. So sorry, I'll get off my soapbox.
Speaking of UT, the next question says, we were surprised to hear the UT rep tell us last week that there wasn't an advantage to applying there under early action.
Yeah.
Have y'all seen any benefit to applying early action to UT, which is kind of a hilarious question, to be honest? And maybe the students have had better success getting into their major of choice by applying early if they're in the top 5%.
I would absolutely apply early. I would not wait. I would, generally speaking, gang, back in our day, when we applied parents to colleges, regular was all that existed. Maybe early decision was just starting, that kind of thing. It just behooves you. You have so many more advantages applying early action, which is not binding. or applying just earlier in the cycle in general, like we talked about with A&M, that why not? And that's part of the reason why we start the essays in March with juniors, is because that is the long pole in the tent. Those are the hardest things to get through. We have to stair step in. We have to get students kind of warmed up in writing in the first person, writing about themselves, having introspection, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, applying earlier is better than waiting until January when, there's some schools where they will fill up more than half of their slots with ED and EA applicants. Just, they will. There's no incentive for them to keep lots and lots of seats open, because at the end of the game, I've always likened the admissions game to like a game of musical chairs. At some point, the music is going to stop. Usually that's May 1st. And the colleges that have the best, people all sitting in their seats by May 1st are the happiest, fullest, and the most profitable, I guess is the right word to say. They're the best positioned. Those schools that have, let's say that you over enroll, you've got 50 students too many that have committed to your college. It seems like it'd be a great problem to have, but it's actually not, because then they have to go find more dorm space and hire more professors, and it's a stress. If they come underneath their enrollment goal by 50 students, that's tens of thousands or hundreds, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars of net tuition revenue that they've lost. So yeah, it's a really precarious, data-driven game on their side, and it definitely helps to apply earlier rather than later. So,
and it's definitely interesting for UT, because UT, this was the first year that they tried early action and it didn't work. They only had like 5% get accepted within the first round of early action. Everybody else was kind of deferred. So it'll be interesting to see if they even continue to offer the early action plan, I would say. Mike, the final question here is there a reverse engineered tool available where we can plug in our daughter's credentials, her grades, her scores, her activities that would indicate the most likely schools to which she would be admitted?
Unfortunately, no, there's not. And the reason why there is not, and there won't be something like that developed, is because of what's called institutional priorities. And this is a little term of art that is a kind of a euphemism within the admissions world. Let's say I'm at Emory. And I am I'm a journalism professor or something. They probably don't have that. But the idea here is that I, as a VP of enrollment at a college, like Emory, I'm being hit over the head by the trustee saying, hey, we need to improve not only our class makeup, but we need to also improve net tuition revenue. Then I've got the dean of students telling me some other things. Hey, we're starting a new program over here. I need to market it. Let's get people into this program. Hey, I've got a person that hit me up in the elevator saying, hey, you know what? I need the star bassoonist. Can you make sure that this person enroll? These are institutional priorities that change year to year, even within the enrollment cycle. So for us to be able to, for anyone to be able to predict that level of granular detail is going to be impossible, because the schools that I'm guessing that you're most interested in, having output for are the most selective schools. They're the ones that have these incredible institutional priority pressures from within. It all is bound up in this idea of arete and institutional excellence year over year, and building long-term, and wealth through their endowment, all of that. So yeah, I wish there was, gang. You can try AI, but we all know AI is good for some things. It's good for, research and data, but I don't trust it super, deeply all that much yet, maybe in a few years. So hopefully that answers the question for you.
Yeah, and that's the last question so far.
Okay, great. So I'm going to hit the last few slides here. These were mentioned within the slideshow. There is a consulting firm out of California that I really respect.
By the way, Mike, if you're sharing, we can't see your screen.
Okay,
so
great.
Just
Thank you. Let me get back over to the control panel here. Okay. Oh, there it is. There's too many screens open here. Okay, here we go. Share screen. And I'm just going to go here. Okay, so we're now looking at the Big J Educational Consulting That's really their name. But anyway, they produce a lot of data, which I really appreciate. Here they're talking about in-state and out-of-state acceptance rates for different schools within the universe of colleges. So what I have done is I've just pulled up a handful of colleges that are on this web page so we could look at them and examine their data for fun. So I put in here UNC Chapel Hill, I put in NC State, Ohio State, Berkeley, and UT Austin. And you can see, let me see if I can get back over here to, oh no, that's okay. You can see that the in-state acceptance rate has the kind of off color green. I'm colorblind. I don't know if that's the right color or not, but yellowish green color. So NC State is a 50% in-state acceptance rate. Out of state, their acceptance rate is only 29%. So that's a very different acceptance rate. So like in the college inroads portal, they're just, grabbing data for Peterson's where, NC State is saying, hey, we have a overall 36% acceptance rate or whatever it is. But the in-state acceptance rate is much higher. The out-of-state acceptance rate is much lower. Ohio State, though, basically at parity. 50% out-of-state acceptance rate, 49% in-state acceptance rate. Berkeley, a 15% in-state acceptance rate and 8% out-of-state. So that just tells you the story of how competitive schools like Berkeley are out-of-state. UNC Chapel Hill, 41% acceptance rate in-state, 9 out-of-state. So when you see your student with a red label for a place like UNC Chapel Hill, again, don't take it personally. It is just the fact that coming in from out of state puts us at a great disadvantage. That's all. And schools like University of Georgia, Georgia Tech, these big flagship schools where I've seen a lot of people kind of fleeing to safety in these large flagship schools don't really understand that, oh my gosh, it's going to be really difficult to compete with Georgians who are offered the Hope Scholarship to, go to their flagship institutions. And then finally, UT Austin has a 41% in-state acceptance rate, at least that's, what's being presented here, and then a 12% out-of-state acceptance rate. So anyway, the law of large numbers apply here. Every year these change a little bit, but it's very interesting to see. And I think for a lot of us, this may be, kind of informative in terms of, wow, we probably, if we need some safety schools, maybe looking at in-state publics, for both financial safety and for acceptance safety might be really great. And then beyond that, we need to know that A&M has become really very, very competitive, even more so than they were 5 years ago. So we all are kind of, I think, attuned to the idea that UT is extremely difficult to get into outside of the top 5%, but A&M is starting to get there as well. So we got Rice, we got A&M, UT that are kind of like the most difficult schools to get into. Whereas, people are super surprised to find out schools like SMU and TCU are much easier to get into, at least from statistically. And between the two of them, TCU is actually much harder to get into than SMU. So lots of surprises in some cases. Okay, so that I think is the last thing I wanted to show. So any other questions?
Going once. Going twice. Nothing in the chat, Mike.
Okay, well, I really appreciate everyone being here. Hopefully this was fun and interesting. If you have any other questions, please just text us into the portal and we'll be right there for you. Thanks, gang. Have a great night.